Muscle cars, the ultimate American take on performance. Why would you make it so complicated with twists and turns when all you need is going into a straight line as fast as possible on a drag strip or maybe even at your local intersection when the police aren't looking? Welcome everyone to episode 81 of the Automotive History series, which is a 3-part definitive guide to the muscle car wars of the 1960s. And this is part 3, the downfall of the muscle car craze. As I explained in the first part, the American quest for performance really started to take off in the 1950s, although they were mostly expensive bankers' hot rods. This all changed in part 2, the golden age of the muscle car wars. In the 1960s, the car market for performance, super and muscle cars exploded after the introduction of the Pontiac GTO in 1964. There were expensive gentlemen's hot rods, stripper muscle cars, and aero warriors. The closing chapter of the decade has to be the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS LS6 with the 454 7.4-liter V8 engine, pushing the horsepower numbers to an earth-shattering 450 horsepower. A definitive answer to the muscle car wars? Maybe, but the race was about to finish. See, after the release of the Pontiac GTO in 1964, in a matter of 5 years, the muscle car craze reached its ultimate top in 1970. But at the same speed the craze developed, it almost completely disappeared. In 5 years' time, so around 1975, the muscle car market had completely collapsed. How so? Well, first of all, the muscle car segment wasn't really all that big as some like to believe. Despite the aggressive marketing and notorious public image, around 1970 about 6% of the total car sales in the US were cars that were classified as muscle cars. The muscle car model series sold anywhere between 10 to 30,000 cars, but the high-spec, top-of-the-range performance editions only a couple dozens or a couple hundred cars. Not exactly great numbers, but enough that any American knew someone in the neighborhood to wake them up every morning with engine roar and tire squeal. During the rise of the muscle car craze, there were some special interest groups that expressed their concerns about the growing popularity of these street machines. These cars were unsafe at any speed for the driver as well as the pedestrian and other road users. And on top of that, it were the car maker's advertisement that almost encouraged drivers to set new records, drive aggressively, and take risks out on the open road. It's like the highly debated gun laws. Is it the gun or the person attached to the gun that's the problem? Is it the muscle car or the driver behind the wheel that is causing the problems? Well, we probably know the answer, but that individuals were able to buy these track warriors outright with any verification or basic training whatsoever, that was something to think about. These groups questioned what the added value was to these overpowered cars. Weren't regular American passenger cars, also with the big V8s, not powerful enough already to keep up with modern traffic? But during the late 60s, these concerns were barely audible over the primal roar of a triple carbureted V8. So what did cause the collapse of the muscle car then? A whole lot of other things that were brewing in the 60s and came into effect in the 70s. Namely concerns that any American car was considered unsafe, dirty, and thirsty. And so new laws and regulations came into effect regarding safety, emissions, and fuel efficiency. The American car industry suddenly had to deal with this. These new rules and regulations were applied to the general American car industry and not to punish the muscle cars in particular. But I don't have to tell you that if there ever was one type of car that exemplified the worst of the worst when it comes to safety, emission, and fuel consumption, it has to be the muscle cars. 1971 marks the first year of a big change coming up. This is the year that cars were required to run on lower octane fuel in an effort to make them pollute less. For reference, many of the muscle cars had high-performance V8 engines that were tuned to only run on premium high-octane fuel. The higher the octane, the better the fuel could withstand a high compression ratio. If the octane level doesn't match the compression ratio, it can lead to engine pinging or knocking. And you don't want come a knockin' when the engine is rockin', or was it the other way around? Anyway, the default choice for these high-performance muscle cars was premium high-octane fuel. By ordering cars to run on a lower octane fuel and restrict the availability of high octane premium fuel, car makers reacted by simply lowering the compression ratio of their engines, including muscle cars. And by doing this, the power output drops. So here we have the first drop in power for the muscle cars. If a muscle car made a proud 400 horsepower in 1970, it made somewhere around 375 horsepower in 1971. And then 1972 rolls around and another change was carried out that further hurt the performance figures. Car makers had to change the way they rated their power from gross to net power output. Before these changes, power ratings were simply all over the place. Engines were tested on a stand without any necessary restrictive components attached to it whatsoever, like a water pump, alternator, a radiator, what you need when you need to drive a car. So yes, under these circumstances, engines could make the advertised figures, but in reality, with an entire car with all necessary components built around it, the actual power was much lower. To some degree, it almost seems like the actual power output wasn't decided in the engine testing room, but the marketing department next door. Hey, so I just got back from the engine testing room and our new V8 makes 250 horsepower. 250? Alright, I'll write down 400. Thanks, Ed. Alright, thanks, Ed. When it comes to muscle cars, the power output usually went both ways. There were certainly V8 engines where the real power output was rumored to be a lot more than advertised, but there were also plenty of muscle cars where you had to take the performance ratings with a grain of salt. So if you had a muscle car with 375 horsepower in 71, expect the power to drop by as much as 100 horsepower in 1972, making 275 or 300 horsepower more likely. Still, great numbers, but not as mind-blowing as advertised. And then 1973 rolls around and this time the performance wasn't hit, but the affordability. Because although the power was lower and the engines polluted just a bit less, the thirst was still mighty. Expect to get no more than 8 miles a gallon or no more than 3 to 4 kilometers out of a liter of fuel. And that is no problem if gas was about 35 cents a gallon, or about $3 a gallon in today's money. But if that number jumps to 55 cents a gallon, or about $5, then the fuel economy starts to look mighty thirsty. From 1974 onwards, the safety, fuel and emission regulations started to get stricter and stricter. In 1974, a national highway speed limit of 55 miles an hour or 90 kilometers an hour was imposed to save on fuel, taking all the fun out of driving your muscle car fast. And by the mid-70s, a ban on unleaded gasoline was peeking around the corner, as well as the addition of catalytic converters, further harming the power output. By 1976-77, you'd consider yourself lucky if you had a sports car that was barely able to make half the power it made 5 years before. Man, in retrospect, muscle cars were getting attacked from every possible direction, didn't they? But these changes I just talked about hit the general American car industry, regardless if it was a muscle car or not. But there was one extra aspect that loomed over all of this and was specifically targeted to muscle cars: rising insurance rates. Insurance companies stepped in and started to make noises about the increase of car accidents involving muscle cars. And did they do this out of the bottom of their hearts, caring about the well-being of the people? Absolutely not. I believe I don't have to tell you that an insurance company likes to turn a profit by collecting more from its insurees than they pay out in damages. But with muscle cars, that was reaching the tipping point. It was statistically proven that muscle cars were more often involved with car accidents than regular cars. As it turns out, a disguised race car tend to be used more as a race car, even on public streets. Who would have thought? And to add insult to injury, not only did the muscle cars crash more often, repairs were also more expensive than regular cars. Those specialized spoilers, cone-shaped noses, and shiny engine performance parts weren't exactly cheap. And last but not least, muscle cars were a popular choice for thieves, as the car and its high-performance components sold for high prices in the underground market. Some insurance companies decided to set up a system of categories, classifying sports, performance and muscle cars, and apply surcharges to these cars. The classification was based on such things like the car's weight, power output, power-to-weight ratio, engine displacement, or simply model names and sports packages. The smallest and lightest of sports cars would get a surcharge of 10 to 15%, but the biggest and baddest road huggers, like some of the top-shelf muscle cars, could be hit with a surcharge from as much as 30 to 50%. This means that you had to pay up as much as $1,000 a year for insurance alone. You can offset that to the retail price of a muscle car, which was around $5,000. Adjusted to inflation and converted to today's money, that means that you pay about $10,000 a year, or about $1,000 a month for insurance alone. So, by 1973-74, you'd really have to be a special kind of crazy, or enthusiast as we like to call it, if you were willing to spend so much on the car that has less power, isn't allowed to go fast, but keeps its fuel thirst, paying more for gas and insurance. You pay more, but you get less in return than a few years before. Some people even started to joke, who was richer? Someone who owns a Cadillac Coupe de Ville, or someone who owns a Plymouth Roadrunner? So, how did the American car industry handle the decline of the muscle cars when there were nice money makers a few years before? Well, various strategies were applied. The easiest one was to cut back on engine options. Some American cars were available with as much as 8, 9, or even 10 different engines, ranging from big to huge. Some high-performance engines were simply discontinued, or came with a warning label saying only choose this engine if you have access to high-octane fuel. If not, we suggest you choose a mid-range option that is converted to run on lower-octane fuel. Still powerful, but not earth-shattering. And then there were car companies that were trying to evade these high insurance rates by passing on smaller sized cars with mid-size V8 engines as muscle cars, like AMC did with the SC360 package on the compact Hornet. The car was fitted with a 360 cubic inch or 5.9 liter V8 that, combined with its compact size, led to a favorable power-to-weight ratio, not punished into financial high hell by the insurance companies. They even proudly proclaimed in the advertisement that the days of the 400 cube, 400 horsepower supercars are over. So why won't you jump into a Hornet and still have some fun? If shuffling your engine option list wasn't going to cut it, more drastic measures were taken. For instance, simply discontinuing your muscle car model series. AMC discontinued the AMX after 3 years in 1970 and the Javelin in 1974. Chrysler kissed Plymouth GTX series goodbye in 1971, but retained the stripper version, the Roadrunner. The GTX was merged as a trim option on the Roadrunner. The Barracuda, although initially a pony car but optionally a muscle car, was discontinued in 1974. And this entire story also goes for the Dodge versions of these cars, like the Challenger. Ford never really had distinct muscle car models, but option packages that turned certain models into muscle cars, like the Mustang. So much of these packages that were available on the Mustang and the Torino and the Mercury Cougar and Cyclone were discontinued. And over at GM, the car that laid the foundations of it all, the Pontiac GTO, effectively ran its course, or drag strip, after 1972. The GTO option package was less and less advertised and completely gone after 1974. A final strategy is to let your muscle cars evolve to operate in a different market segment. The model name stays, but the car changes and adapts to the whims of the market. In general, with the decline of the muscle car, the sports theme evolved into sports luxury theme or sports appearance theme. And from there you could practically scrap the sports part, so simply luxury and appearance. The engine powered down, no longer able to support the sports and performance claims, the muscle car craze evolved to become the malaise era or the broom era. Racing stripes became pinstripes, rally wheels became white walls, hood scoops became waterfall grills, and hood pins became cornering lamps, and the pistol grip shifter,
fine Corinthian leather.
The first deluxe brougham appearance packages on muscle cars already started to pop up in the early 70s. And by the mid-70s, most muscle cars were converted to become sports luxury cars without any form of sportiness, or personal luxury cars. In 1974, the Ford Mustang II was downsized and was given a European-esque sports luxury appearance. The V8 was gone for the first year and replaced by a 6 and even 4-cylinder engine. The mighty Dodge Charger switched market segments in 1975, fully embracing the personal luxury car market by being a downgraded sister of the Chrysler Cordoba. And all of GM's A-body cars, like the Oldsmobile 442, the Chevrolet Chevelle SS, and the Buick Grand Sport, dropped the performance packages and embraced the deluxe Brougham packages. The performance packages that were kept increasingly turned into appearance packages. These cars appear to be sporty without being sporty. These packages usually meant sports-tuned suspension and a dual exhaust, but above all, stickers. Lots and lots of stickers. The more, the merrier. Screaming chickens, big fun model names, and race stripes everywhere. The golden rule is that with the loss of every 50 horsepower under the hood, you added another stripe on that hood. It's kind of like those gym bros that want to let everyone know with their obnoxious grunting and social media mirror selfies that, oh yeah, they're training, but they haven't touched a treadmill at all. Now that's late 1970s muscle cars for you. By the late 70s, the muscle car craze was definitely over. Fake luxury, safety and emission standards, and gas crises were the thing of the day. Power was down across the board. And here's the fun part. If you want to know what one of the fastest cars was in the USA of the late 70s, it's this. The Dodge Little Red Express truck. So it's not even a car, but a truck. Long story short, most of the emission and fuel efficiency rules only apply to passenger cars. Light commercial vehicles like vans and pickup trucks were exempt, essentially allowing them to have V8 engines with power output that were almost unchanged and hardly affected by the rules. This particular pickup made 225 horsepower from a 360 V8. And this concludes the decade. Whereas at the start of the 70s, the average muscle car reached its peak with 7-liter V8 engines or larger with power outputs somewhere between 400 and 450, by the late 70s, this all vanished. Muscle cars, even if they existed at all, still offered fairly big engines in the 3 to 5 liter range, but with abysmal power outputs, as low as 150 to 200 horsepower tops, and we're getting passed left and right by pickup trucks. And this concludes our 3-part journey to the rise, height, and fall of the muscle car craze.